إني أمد يدي إلى جميع القيادات،
فكما يرفض تيار المستقبل أن يكون على صورة حزب الله.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Future TV. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. Lebanon's new government begins work by forming a committee tasked with drafting the ministerial statement. A Lebanese man turns himself over to police in Sydney, Australia, after allegedly killing his wife. And the Syrian government forces recapture a village in central Hama province, a day after the Free Syrian Army rebel group fired and replaced its military chief, Salim Idris. Lebanon's new government has begun work by forming a committee tasked with drafting the ministerial statements. The national news agency says the committee was announced at the end of the meeting presided by President Michel Sleiman at Badda Palace. The NNA stated that the committee is comprised of State Minister Mohammed Fneish, Finance Minister Ali Hassan Khalil, Telecommunications Minister Boutros Harib, Health Minister Wael Abu Fahour, Foreign Minister Gibran Basil, Labour Minister Sejan Azzi, and Interior Minister Nuhad Mashnouk. The ministerial statement must be presented to Parliament before a vote of confidence can take place. Speaking ahead of the meeting, Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Samir Muqbil said the cabinet needed to quickly deal with the work at hand in order to fulfill its mission. This comes after a new unity cabinet of 24 ministers was formed on Saturday, following 11 months of bickering between rival political parties. Senior Hezbollah security official Wafi Safa has met with Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi to congratulate him on his appointment and to restore communication channels. Rifi tells reporters at Badda Palace that the meeting with Safa was in the framework of restoring contacts that already existed with Hezbollah for the protection of the country. Rifi also says he discussed with Safa the possibility of removing any illegitimate checkpoints from the Arsal-Labwi road, apparently referring to checkpoints established by Hezbollah on the East Lebanon road after several deadly bombings nearby targeting towns in the northern Bekaa. Rifi has repeatedly voiced criticism of Hezbollah, while the March 8 Alliance, for its part, rejected a proposal that would have seen Rifi take over as Interior Minister. Safa also reportedly contacted newly appointed Interior Minister Nuhad Mashnouk to congratulate him. Speaker Nabih Berri says the presidential elections must be held between March the 25th and May the 25th. Berri's comments came in a televised address in which he said he will not open that subject before March the 25th because his constitutional powers only allow for that matter beginning from March the 25th. He added that in the previous presidential elections in 2007-2008, he had called for 18 sessions to elect the president, but the required amount of votes was not met. Berri stressed on cooperation among the political parties during the upcoming elections to secure the sufficient amount of votes in order to avoid what had happened the previous time. The Kafa Violence and Exploitation Organization has announced the death of poisoning of a woman identified as Cristal Abu Sha'ra. In a statement, Kafa says less than a month after the killing of Manal al-Asi, the citizen Cristal Abu Sha'ra has met the same fate after she died of poisoning by a pesticide. Cristal's mother has filed a personal lawsuit against the husband, identified as RH, who is currently being held for interrogation. The organization, which seeks to eradicate all forms of gender-based violence and exploitation of women and children, says the woman died at Hayek Hospital, noting that Speaker Nabih Berri must be asked about the murder crimes targeting women. In this regard, Kafa urged the Parliament Speaker to call for a legislative session that has the draft law on protecting women from domestic violence on top of its agenda in order to approve it as soon as possible. In related news, a Lebanese man has turned himself over to police after allegedly killing his wife in Sydney, Australia. Australian media says 55-year-old George Tanous allegedly killed his wife Margaret, 47, in an apartment in the southwestern Sydney suburb of Bankstown last night. Margaret, who suffered severe head wounds, reportedly died shortly after arrival at the hospital. Reports say the Lebanese couple have 2 children. Australian media says Tanous was charged with murder for beating his wife to death, but didn't offer a motive for the attack. A judge refused Tanous' bail, and the suspect did not enter a plea. The couple's son, Eli, posted a photo of his mother and an emotional tribute on Facebook. Syrian government forces have recaptured a village in central Hama province a day after the Free Syrian Army rebel group fired and replaced its military chief, Salim Idris. Reports say army units have established total control over Man after crushing the terrorists who had infiltrated the village and committed a massacre against the civilian residents. Reports also say that the army has recaptured Man after 42 civilians had been killed by terrorists. This comes a day after activists reported bombing by helicopter gunships took place in the town of Kafr Zayta in central Hama province. Footage uploaded to the internet by activist groups showed that what they claimed was a missile attack on a tank by the Tahwid Brigade, who operate in and around Aleppo. Teenage activist and Nobel Peace Prize nominee Malala Yousafzai visits the Jordanian border, crossing at Hadalat, where hundreds of Syrian refugees cross each day. The number of Syrians seeking refuge in Jordan has increased in recent days due to intensified fighting in their villages. More in this report.
Suffering in flight from her own country. But on this day, Malala Yousafzai is here to witness the flight of others. In 2012, Malala miraculously survived a shot to the head. Gunmen attacked the school bus she was on in the northwest Pakistani district of Swat. It was reprisal for publicly denouncing Taliban rule. Now in exile, Malala devotes her life to helping those in need.
I could see little children and with no shoes and with dirty clothes and all suffering from pain because they started walking since 4 o'clock in the morning.
Her father traveled with her. Together, they spoke to refugees.
It's a big difference when you hear about something and when you see something. I could not control my tears. We cried.
They learned that these families took only what they could on their backs, about the destruction of their homes, about having no choice but to leave.
مرمرنا والله متنا لو وصلنا هون مرمرنا والله عصينا بالسيارة بيجي 3 مرات اي والله
الشعب هناك كثير عم بيعاني أكل ما فيه علاج ما فيه أطفال تموت شباب تقتل.
UNHCR puts the number of refugees in Jordan at more than 650,000 and expects it to increase significantly this year. The Malala Fund is starting its next project in Jordan. It will put an emphasis on education in the hopes of giving Syrian refugee children a better future. As Malala and her father say goodbye, new arrivals are taken by truck to temporary shelters.
Coming up next, archaeologists in Mexico discover what could be the first pet cemetery of ancient civilizations. Welcome back. 6 world powers and Iran began talks in Vienna, Austria, in pursuit of a final settlement on Tehran's disputed nuclear program in the coming months, despite warnings from both sides that a deal may prove impossible. Expected to last 2 or 3 days, the meeting is the first since the powers, that means the United States, Russia, China, France, Britain, and Germany, struck an interim accord with Iran in November of last year, under which Iran scaled back its most sensitive nuclear work in return for some sanctions relief. In a final deal, Western governments want to define the permissible scope of an Iranian nuclear program and resolve their concerns that Iran is seeking the capability to build an atomic bomb. Iran, which denies having any such goal, wants the complete removal of painful economic sanctions imposed by Washington, European governments, and the United Nations. 19 people have been killed after 10 car bombs struck central Iraq, including 5 in the capital, Baghdad. Today's blast in the Iraqi capital hit 4 different areas, killing at least 10 people and wounding at least 30 others. 2 blasts went off in Baya, south of Baghdad, killing at least 5 people, while another exploded in a nearby area, claiming the lives of 2 people. 3 more car bombs exploded in Hilla, south of Baghdad, killing 5 people and wounding 22, while 1 in Musayyib and another in Iskandariya killed a total of 4 people and wounded 32. The attacks come a day after a series of explosions in the capital left at least 23 dead. Those attacks on Monday occurred shortly after sunset and targeted crowded commercial areas near Shiite mosques. Moving on to Asia, clashes between police and anti-government demonstrators in Bangkok, Thailand, have left 4 people dead and dozens wounded as riot police attempted to clear out protest camps around the Thai capital. Multiple gunshots were heard near the Prime Minister's office, where the police had started to remove protesters, but it was not clear who was firing. Meanwhile, the Department of Special Investigation has accused protesters of launching grenades at the police. Violence erupted after police moved into several locations around the city to detain protesters who have been camping out for weeks now to press for Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawtra's resignation. Anti-government's protesters have blocked access to government offices since late last year and occupied key intersections around Bangkok for about a month now. The government has announced it wants to retake all the besieged buildings this week. And now for news around the world in brief. French police has arrested a 48-year-old man in connection with the shooting of a British-Iraqi family and a French cyclist in September of 2012. Police did not reveal the name of the man living in the Haute-Savoie region of southeastern France, but said that more arrests could follow. Saad El-Haili was shot dead with his wife and mother-in-law on September the 5th of 2012, and the body of French cyclist Sylvain Moyer was discovered nearby. Police have fired rubber bullets at stone-throwing protesters in clashes near Ukraine's parliament, where a crucial session on constitutional reform is expected. Protesters tried to get closer to the heavily fortified parliament building, leading police to retaliate with smoke bombs and rubber bullets. Reports say about 20,000 protesters marched from Kiev's Independence Square to Parliament to demand a vote on reforms to strip President Viktor Yanukovych of key powers. 3 artisanal miners have emerged out of a disused and temporarily blocked shaft near Johannesburg, South Africa, after initially refusing rescuers' help, fearing arrest. They followed 22 miners who had come out of the gold mine at Benoni on Monday after a rescue operation was launched the day before amid fears of dozens trapped below the surface. South African police tell reporters the 22 were charged with illegal mining at the workings. Archaeologists in Mexico discovered 12 sets of ancient Aztec dog remains under a flat in downtown Mexico City that date back some 500 years. Experts believe the find could be the world's oldest canine cemetery and the first pet cemetery of ancient civilization. Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History says the ancient burial site was discovered under a block of flats in the populous Mexico City barrio Aztacapozalco. The remains of the dogs are believed to date as far back as the 14th century. While the exact breed of the dog has not yet been identified, canines were revered by the mysterious civilization as the guardians of the dead, buried together with humans to guide them to the afterlife. They've also been found under ancient monuments and pyramids, which the Aztecs believe would help protect the structures. Experts have speculated that the remains could be from the Techichi breed, an ancestor of the modern-day Chihuahua, which the Aztecs kept as pets. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. Lebanon's new government begins work by forming a committee tasked with drafting the ministerial statement. A Lebanese man turned himself over to police in Sydney, Australia, after allegedly killing his wife. And Syrian government forces recapture a village in central Hama province, a day after the Free Syrian Army rebel group fired and replaced its military chief, Salim Idris. Those were today's headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice evening.
إني أمد يدي إلى جميع القيادات.
فكما يرفض تيار المستقبل أن يكون على صورة حزب الله،